in Hollywood on the West Coast where there's total panic right now, total panic because everybody's like, oh my gosh, what is Donald Trump thinking of? What is he doing? Well, what he's thinking of, frankly, ladies and gentlemen, is the right thing for the industry. It's the right thing for America. He's talking about saying, okay, you can't just go and shoot all these movies all over the place and not be employing American workers when you do. So Hollywood's in a little bit of trouble, and Hollywood's kind of freaking out at this moment in time because here's what he said, and I'm going to read it to you. This is the Truth Social that went out last night, like a ticking time bomb. All of Hollywood, they're 3 hours behind too. They're like, oh my gosh. So they had all Sunday night to worry about this, and of course all of today. The movie industry in America, he wrote, is dying a very fast death. Other countries are offering all sorts of incentives to draw our filmmakers and our studios away from the United States. Hollywood and many other areas within the USA are being devastated. This is an effort by other nations and therefore a national security threat. It is, in addition to everything else, messaging and propaganda. Therefore, I am authorizing the Department of Commerce and the United States Trade Representative to immediately begin the process of instituting a 100% tariff, not 10%. A 100% tariff on any and all movies coming into the country that are produced in foreign lands. We want movies made in America again. Wow. So a lot of people asking a lot of questions like, what would that look like? Why is he doing this? Don't forget, remember, he got Sylvester Stallone, he got Jon Voight, and he got Mel Gibson to join a committee and try and figure out, like, what is it that we need to do to be more competitive? Because don't forget, I've told you before, right? All the money that went into producing some of these movies over the years. Don't forget, this is what we exported so well via our CIA. This is the Smith-Mundt Modernization Act. Well, we had the Smith-Mundt Act, which allowed for taxpayer dollars to go into propaganda that would be used overseas to advance our message, whatever message that the State Department, the CIA wanted advanced. And it wasn't allowed to be used back here on us, right? Not until Obama came along and said, oh, we got to modernize this thing. Let's be able to use our taxpayer dollars to run a giant psych op on American citizens. So when you wonder why it is that all the ladies on The View sound the same and everybody over at MSNBC sounds the same and CNN and the rest of it and Reuters and Bloomberg and it's because in part of this Smith-Mundt Modernization Act of 2012. We wonder how much Hollywood got trapped up in that as well. And so, there's a message to woke Hollywood that, yeah, you need to get on the right page, but there's also a message to woke Hollywood that you need to start doing the right thing vis-a-vis the entire film industry, right? Like employ Americans. I get it. You're squeezing every little last profit out of this thing you can. I mean, if you actually made good movies, maybe you wouldn't have to do that as much. Snow White, I'm looking at you, right? Captain America, I'm looking at you. If you guys actually made good movies there in Hollywood, you wouldn't fall under the pressure of having to deal with this. But this is where we are right now. And Donald Trump's taking a look at it along with his committee. And he's sort of like, gee, we got to be able to do better. We should be able to do better. And this is not sustainable. It's just not sustainable. And he's right. It's not sustainable because you need a successful entertainment industry. It's critical to our economy overall. We want that. We love that. And so why not have that? Why have that taken from us? You look at all the incentives, right? All the incentives that all of these countries have been putting forward vis-a-vis carrots to say, okay, we'll give you a tax deduction if you come here and film it here. And so what does everybody do? They go to Canada. They go to the UK. They go to Ireland. Everybody films all over the place except here in America. And that's where he's sort of saying, enough is enough. Here he is. It's a little bit hard to hear because he's outside the helicopter there, but I want you to hear him speaking about this, saying Hollywood's being destroyed and we shouldn't just sit by and be so willing to take it.
The movie tariffs, what they've done is other nations have been stealing the movie-making capabilities from the United States. And I said to a couple of people, what do you think? I've done some very strong research over the last week, and we're making very few movies now. Hollywood is being destroyed. Now, you have an grossly incompetent governor that allowed that to happen, so I'm not just blaming other nations, but other nations, a lot of them, have stolen our movie industry. And I'm saying, if they're not willing to make a movie inside the United States, then we should have a tariff on movies that come in. And not only that, governments are actually giving big money. I mean, they're supporting them financially. So that's sort of a threat to our country in a sense. And It's been a very popular thing. I can tell you one thing, movie makers love it.
Yeah. So if every other country is offering a huge tax deduction for you to go and make your movie there, and if the labor is so much cheaper there, then why wouldn't you go? Unless there was some incentive to actually make it back here at home. Now, a lot of people had hoped you'd see more incentives from states. We did see some. For example, New Jersey was offering some incentives. Of course, New Jersey is just a train wreck when it comes to a lot of things. Newark Airport and also taxes. But they were trying to do things. I think Tennessee also was making some advances in that department. And we need to see more of that. I mean, you can't make a movie in California anymore, because the cost of living is so expensive in California. And because there are no incentives to be able to do any of that. So he's right. Like, the governor of California ought to step up to the plate and do a little bit more. But what he's trying to do is say, okay, you better make them here, because if you don't, guess what? It's going to cost you twice as much. Now, how does that work? Logistically, people are saying, well, this gets a little tricky, right? Because this is effectively intellectual property. But if you're making that movie overseas, say like a Snow White that Disney made primarily out of the UK, you could say, all right, well, we're going to put a tax effectively on ticket prices. We're going to take a share of your revenue unless you make that here in the US. So that's the idea that is being proposed, and that's what he's trying to figure out. In other words, can you find a way to incentivize these Hollywood studios to make things back here at home? I mean, I don't know as any movies are really made back here at home anymore. Everything is made overseas, especially, by the way, with the streaming units. It's incredible when you look at where the streaming, Netflix and Disney Plus and Apple TV, all the streaming entities are actually making a lot of things overseas, again, because the thinking is it's cheaper, and it's this race to the bottom. And you've got to kind of walk a line, if you would, and it is a line. Remember Art Laffer with the Laffer curve? And he was explaining to Regan, at some point, if you're taxing too much, you actually drive the incentive to create down. So maybe 100% is not the level. I don't know where it'll shake out at, but you got to be somewhere. In other words, you've got to actually be in the game. And if every other country is coming along and saying, hey, we can do this, we can do that, we can do this, and you can't compete, then what happens? Especially in something like movies, which is intellectual property and actually is kind of what you want, right? Don't you want that as a nation? You want to have this influence on culture, and you want to be able to export that and make it right here at home and employ people right here at home. I'll tell you, a lot of it probably goes back to unions and a whole lot of other things, right? You get a lot of problems, and it goes back to California, and it goes back to Gavin Newsom and Gavin Newsom's inability to really do the right thing by that state. It's kind of a tragedy when you think about what California was back in the Reagan years, right? And what it has become. So there is an opportunity there. It's a massive industry. And Donald Trump is basically freaking everyone out. Can you imagine Bob Iger right now? I mean, Bob Iger's sweating it, right? Over at Disney, because he's got earnings coming up on Wednesday morning. Who knows how those things are going to look? Disney, they're still stuck with the ABC Newses of the world, the Whoopi Goldbergs of the world, the George Stephanopoulos of the world. We're going to get to that in a second, but first, a quick shout out to our friends over at American Heart for Gold. Trish loves gold. You know I do. Gold actually trading up again today. We've got a market that's a little bit mixed right now. If you're interested in investing in gold, and by the way, I think you should be for a whole host of reasons, not just inflation, right? Even if inflation comes down, what is the idea behind gold? It's security, it's safety, it's that safe haven in the event of some unforeseen thing, God forbid, or even in the event that you have more and more countries, and we've seen this, central banks all over the world, that are looking to buy gold so as to diversify away from the US dollar and U.S. treasuries. We don't necessarily want them doing that, but they are doing that. That's just the reality of what's happening. On top of that, you get a declining U.S. dollar. And if Donald Trump gets his way, right, we will have Fed cuts, and therefore you will have an even further declining U.S. dollar, which would then support, again, the price of gold. So take a look at gold when you can, up to $15,000 in free silver. For listeners of the Trish Regan Show, trishlovesgold.com is where you need to go, or you can text Trish to 65532 right now. Text Trish to 65532. You can call them at 1-844-495-1115. Wow, Disney is like freaking out, because Disney is dealing with, oh my gosh, now he wants to tariff us too. I mean, I mean, hey, woke universities, you're not the only one feeling the heat of Donald Trump. The movie studios are. Disney certainly is. They've got the FCC breathing down their back right over at Disney right now, opening up investigations into the DEI practices of ABC News. And now they're looking to possibly tariff the Disney productions and the streaming productions that they're shooting overseas instead of in the good old US of A. Disney has earnings out this Wednesday morning. Look for those ahead of the bell, and they are certainly under fire for, as I said, a variety of reasons. FCC being kind of a biggie, but also just the pure old reality that the company's not doing that well. Not doing that well at all, and it's like he knows it. Did you see this one over the weekend? Donald Trump trolling Disney and Iger. May the 4th, get it, Force, for the Star Wars geeks out there. I'm not a Star Wars geek. Definitely not. But some of you may be. So may the 4th be with you. And including the radical left lunatics, he writes, who are fighting so hard to bring the Sith lords, murderers, drug lords, dangerous prisoners, and well-known MS-13 gang members back into our galaxy. You're not the rebellion of the empire. Okay. So Star Wars is now a Disney product. So kind of a fun troll from the White House over the weekend. I'll tell you, they do have a good sense of humor. You got to give them that. If nothing else, they get a heck of a sense of humor. But Disney may not have a sense of humor, nor do investors have a sense of humor about earnings right now, because their woke film division will pay the price in light of these tariffs. So this is just one more thing. You wonder why ABC News did not want Donald Trump winning. You wonder why Bob Iger seemed to be totally okay with Whoopi Goldberg saying insane things like, oh, he's going to round you all up, all the gays, all the this, all the that, and he's going to deport you. And we're looking at this going, how can they actually say this stuff? Like, this is so bizarre. Well, I think it was because they really wanted to make sure that Donald Trump didn't win, because they were so terrified of this moment in time that we're looking at now, where the FCC would be in there saying, what exactly do you have going on for DEI? And why exactly do we need to have affiliates paying you, ABC, for this? I could say a bad word, but I won't. Programming. On top of that, you're making all your movies overseas. That horrible Snow White that you made, that you saved all that money on with tax breaks out of the UK, well, we're going to make you make that stuff back here at home. Thank you very much. Maybe if you make it back here at home, you actually have to pay attention to profits a little bit more. I mean, you should be paying attention to profits. That's what investors want you to do, right? We got the stock trading around $98. It had been trading up around 200 and change. Don't forget, some 5 years ago. So this is dead money, bad money, plunging money. Disney has been a real mess. And you know what else is tough for Disney? The reality that they are no longer the only game in town. They've been trying this whole streaming thing. They know they got to get out of the traditional television business. They can't, of course, because nobody will actually buy their traditional television business. Don't forget, I told you the other day how it sold in the early 90s, ABC, the network, for some $19 billion, that's with a B, dollars to Disney. And apparently Disney got an offer from Nexstar for somewhere around $10 billion. And so suddenly, Bob Iger went from, oh yeah, I'm going to sell it, to maybe I'm not going to sell it. Maybe we can actually make something of this here. Maybe we can turn this into a streaming business. Good luck. I mean, already Disney has lost that round to none other than Netflix, and probably Apple as well, because Apple has some really good streaming products. I mean, they get the earnings coming up on Wednesday, and one of the things that people keep saying is, can they actually even compete with Netflix? I mean, that is a big problem. They got dwarfed, pun intended, Barron's rights over the weekend by Netflix. What investors want to be seeing on earnings day? Investors want to see that the parks division and the cruise division, right? That the basically the experiences division is holding up, but they're worried that maybe it can't hold up in light of the economic challenges that we're facing as a nation right now. I don't know how true that is. I'm going to be honest with you. I looked at the visa numbers recently. Rob and I wrote about this actually at 76 Research, and we were talking about how the visa numbers actually looked really, really, really good. And so that was very encouraging to see, because it shows you the U.S. consumer is still spending, and enjoys spending and likes spending, and is going to probably continue spending unless things get really bad. But Disney is already using this as an excuse. Oh, if those park attendance rates are down and therefore earnings are down at the theme parks, they're going to point to the economy and they're going to say Trump's economy is killing us. And it's the threat of Trump tariffs, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. So watch for that in the call. I wouldn't be surprised. It doesn't change how investors are going to feel. If we hear that things are bad at Disney and people start selling off Disney as a result, I think that, it's still a bad scenario for one Bob Iger, who has not been able to turn this thing around at all. The other thing that came up in the Barron's article over the weekend, which I think is really interesting, is just how bad a disaster the film entity is. So maybe they ought to sell off the film division as well, not just legacy media, but you guys have you jumped the shark in terms of the film division. And Snow White was phenomenal proof of that. Again, don't forget how they titled this at Barron's. They did say, that Disney's getting dwarfed by Netflix, getting totally dwarfed. But they're saying, one of the reasons for this is because of the challenges they've seen at the film box office with Snow White, which topped $200 million in worldwide box office receipts. And before you say, woohoo, yay, you got to realize, as they write, hold the applause, industry reports say it cost about $250 million to make. I don't even think that includes the marketing, et cetera. I mean, they had a lot going on here and a lot that went into this. But $250 million to make, suggesting that it could need $500 million or more to break even. But after 6 weeks in theaters, ticket sales are down to a trickle. It is a poison apple. In other words, they write, Disney quickly halted Tangled, a live action remake based on the Rapunzel story. We told you about that right here, right? Because there was no way. When they saw how badly this one was doing, they realized they just couldn't have another bomb, another woke, DEI, nonsensical bomb out there that was not going to fly or play in mainstream America or elsewhere in the world for that matter. So this film division is under a tremendous amount of pressure, and it doesn't look like it's going to change anytime soon. I actually think that maybe the tariff thing will shake things up and they'll start saying, hey, maybe actually we need to focus on creating movies that people want to watch, because we can't sell our TV assets. We tried. We want to. Right? Bob Iger I've played you the soundbite, CNBC's David Faber at Sun Valley some year and a half ago, 2 years ago. I really want to get out of this, businesses that are not the opportunity businesses for our network. They are not ones that are going to be crucial to us in the future. And yet he couldn't. He tried, he couldn't. And so now he's back to square one. He's saying, okay, well, maybe I can change this into some kind of streaming business. And they're all proud because ESPN, I guess, got 200 million views in a recent month, streaming views. Dun, dun, dun. I just want to point something out, you guys. This is really good news. We're up to like 730,000 subs right here on this little channel. I'm not putting out 300 to 400 pieces of content a day like ESPN is. And guess what? We did 98 million views right here on this little channel last month alone. So that means I'm basically half the size of the streaming business of ESPN. I would just say, ESPN, you got a ways to go, but this is fantastic. And this is thanks to you. And this shows you how much things have changed. And maybe it's the individual as opposed to the network, right? That matters in this kind of new world and in this new streaming environment. So, wow, 730,000 subs, 98 million views right here on the Trish Regan channel. It's incredible. And I think that Disney is now sort of in this mode where they're not going to be able to get out of this. I don't know how they change. I don't know how they actually evolve unless they say, okay, we're going to double down on theme parks and cruises and the experiences. And, at some point, you're going to go in, you got to shake up the film division, you got to shake up the TV division, and you got to actually get rid of all the wokeness that is weighing down your business and just look to turn a profit. Is it that hard?